Hello dear children. In this particular video we are going to study about the forms of business organization. Basically we have finished chapter number 1, that's nature and purpose of business. Now it's time for us to begin with chapter 2, the forms of business organization. This chapter will teach you the classification on the basis of private, public and joint, and then in detail we will study about the various forms of private sector enterprises. When I say private sector enterprises, I mean the businesses which are owned, managed and controlled by private individuals. So let's begin this chapter. So children, before we start with the various forms of private sector enterprises, first of all, you need to know that what are the various forms of businesses or enterprises on the basis of their ownership. Children, the very first type of a business enterprise is the private sector enterprise. As you can see, that's number 1. A private sector enterprise is the type of business which is owned, controlled and managed by private individuals. When I say private individuals, I mean that they are private people. They are not business organizations. They are normal people like you and me who invest their money, who invest the capital that they have to start a business. So these private sector enterprises, they are owned, managed and controlled by the private individuals. And the main motive behind these private sector enterprises is actually earning profit. That's the basic motto of even doing any sort of business. So basically these individuals who run these private sector enterprises, they want to earn profit and hence they run it. Examples are Reliance India Limited, Tata, Birla, Wipro, Dabur. All these businesses, all these companies that you see who are huge success, they are example of private sector enterprises, and these are the ones which are run, which have been started and which are owned and managed by private individuals. The second type is public sector enterprise. Public sector enterprise, these are the ones which are owned, managed and controlled by the central or the state government. They are not owned by private individuals like you and me. These come under the ownership, the control and the management of the government. It can be the central government, it can be the state government, or it can be in a partnership between both of these. So they are owned, managed and controlled by the government. Example, SAIL, GAIL. And the main motto of the government as well as these public sector enterprises is to provide services to the people. So public sector enterprises, they provide services to the people. And the last one is your joint sector enterprise. When I say joint sector enterprise, what do I mean? I mean that these are owned, managed and controlled by whom? By jointly the private entrepreneur and the government. That means the private entrepreneurs, the private businessman and the government, they both come together to run these enterprises. Why do they come together? There are some very high priority project in which efficiency and government restrictions, and you can say the basic control of the government is very much required, as these business enterprises, they are of big public use. So hence, many of the time the government wants the people to benefit and on a large scale, and hence they also ask these private sector enterprises to join themselves. So joint sector enterprises, they are owned, managed and controlled by private entrepreneurs and the government. Example, Maruti Udyog, ONGC. These are some of the examples where the private and the public sector, they come together. So basically they are a joint example of a business where the private entrepreneurs and the government, they join hands to run the business. So business is basically classified into these 3 types on the basis of ownership. Private sector, which is owned, managed and controlled by the private individuals. Public sector, which is owned, managed and controlled by the government, whether the state or the central. And the joint sector, which is owned, managed and controlled by both, in a joint participation by the private and the government. Normally the government, it basically introduces all the capital and the money, and the day-to-day functioning of the business is performed by the private enterprises or the private entrepreneurs as they bring in efficiency. So these are the classification of the business enterprises. So as I explained you in the very first beginning of this particular video only, that we are going to study about the forms of private sector enterprises in this particular chapter. This particular chapter we will be studying about the various type of private sector enterprises only, and basically there are those five categories which we will study in detail. The very first one is sole proprietorship, joint Hindu family business, partnership firm, cooperative society, and the company, which is the joint stock company. So basically we will study each. These all are the type of businesses which are owned, managed and controlled by private entrepreneurs, private businessmen. The government doesn't play any role in its functioning, in its management or its control. The very first one is sole proprietorship. Sole means one and proprietor matlab owner. So these businesses, they are owned, managed and controlled by single individual, one person. जब एक अकेला इंसान, one particular person, one single person, he runs the whole business all alone by himself. He brings in the capital, he introduces all the money there, he is the one who controls the business, runs it, does every work for the business. So that sort of a business is known as a sole proprietorship business. So a business which is owned, managed and controlled by a single individual, it is known as a sole proprietorship business. There are certain features. The very first one is single ownership. These businesses, as I told you, it is owned by one single person. So there is no other person except the owner who can claim over its ownership rights. He is the person who brings it all the money which is required. It can be from his personal savings, uska khud ka paisa ho, or he can also get it in the form of loan and credit. But he brings all the money all by himself, and hence he is the single owner. Formation and closure, starting and finishing of this business is really very easy. The reason is that no legal formality is required to start or end this business. It can be started whenever you like. It can be ended according to the need, according to the feelings and according to the requirement of the sole proprietor. There is no law. It doesn't comes under any law. Any grocery shop in your locality, these hawkers, the vendors, the vegetable sellers, all these are examples of sole proprietors. Whenever they want, they can start the business. Whenever they want, they can close it. They don't need to ask anyone, nor do they need to take permission. No legal formality is there. Only in some cases, like a chemist shop, like arms or weapons, or maybe an alcohol, there are some categories where you have to take a license from the government, but it only remains till that license. Once you get the license, then you are the one who can start it, or if you want, you can end it. No legal process is there to begin or to finish this type of business. Hence the formation and the closure of a sole proprietorship business is very easy and simple. The third characteristic is unlimited liability. Liability refers to the responsibility for paying any debts or losses which the business has incurred. किसी भी टाइप का लॉस हो या कोई उधार हो या कोई लोन हो, उसको भरने की जो जिम्मेदारी होती है उसे हम liability कहते हैं. So in a sole proprietorship business, the liability is of the sole proprietor himself. I mean, he is the whole sole person who has to bear all the risk. And अगर losses इतने ज़्यादा हो गए कि business के assets बेचने के बाद भी they are not being able to be paid, so there he has to sell his personal property also. So you can understand that the liability of a sole proprietorship is unlimited, because it's the sole proprietor who's going to bear the all. He's the one who's going to take all the profit. He's the one who's going to also bear all the loss. So he's the one. अगर businesses को loss होते हैं तो सारी जिम्मेदारी सिर्फ sole proprietor की ही होती है. Next one, as you can see, is individual risk bearing and profit recipient. As you know that he is the person who's bringing in all the money. He is the person who's going to take all the profit. So yes, सारा पैसा उसका है. So अगर कोई लॉस होता है, उसका रिस्क and whatever profit he is earning, the whole profit, it all belongs to that one single person, the sole proprietor. He is the whole sole receiver of the profit and also the bearer of the risk. He alone bears everything, because the whole business is run by him, it's his responsibility, and he owns it. So he's the alone risk bearer and the profit recipient. Next one is one man control. As I told you that it is owned, managed and controlled by that one single person. He's the one who's going to take all the decisions which are related to the business, and the whole control lies in the hand of the sole proprietor himself. He is the one who decides that what is going to take place in the business, anything and everything of the business, the whole control, all the decision making remains in his hand. Next one, as it is separate legal entity, there is no separate legal entity. अब separate legal entity क्या है? When a business is registered under the Companies Act और any other law, तब उसकी एक अपनी separate legal entity हो जाती है. Business अपने नाम से ज़मीन खरीद सकता है, it can buy assets, it can get into contracts and agreements, and the owner cannot claim over it. अगर रिलायंस कंपनी जो अगर कोई ज़मीन खरीदती है तो उसके जो शेयर होल्डर्स हैं, जो ओनर्स होते हैं, शेयर होल्डर्स आर द ओनर्स ऑफ अ बिजनेस, दे कैन नॉट क्लेम ओवर दैट लैंड बिकॉज दैट डज नॉट बिलोंग टू देम. Getting my point? So this is called separate legal entity. But in sole proprietorship ऐसी कोई separate legal entity नहीं होती. बिजनेस और बिजनेसमैन दोनों एक ही होते हैं. अगर बिजनेस अच्छा चल रहा है तो मतलब बिजनेसमैन अच्छा चल रहा है. अगर बिजनेसमैन को कुछ हो जाए, if he dies or anything happens to him, the business will come to an end. लॉ जो है वो बिजनेस और उसके ओनर में कोई डिफरेंस नहीं करता. बिजनेस एंड ओनर बोथ आर सेम in the eyes of law. Next one, lack of business continuity. As I told you that there is no separate legal entity. Reliance के शेयर होल्डर अगर शेयर बेच दे अपना या मर जाएं या छोड़ के चले जाएं, then still Reliance company will keep on going. But if a sole proprietor dies, then the business immediately comes to an end. If he becomes insolvent, that means if he loses all his money, then also the business will come to an end. So anything which is happening to the businessman will be directly attached to the business. And last one is small size. एज देर इज़ ओनली वन पर्सन, तो एक इंसान की जो पैसे लाने की या इन्वेस्ट करने की कैपेसिटी होती है, दैट्स ऑलवेज लिमिटेड. सो हैंस इट कैन नॉट गो बियॉन्ड एन एक्सटेंट. इट विल ऑलवेज रिमेन अ स्मॉल बिजनेस. अगर बिजनेस को और बहुत बड़ा करना है, सो यू नीड टू आस्क और यू नीड टू हैव वन मोर पार्टनर, बट वो तुरंत पार्टनरशिप बन जाएगा. जहाँ ही ओनर्स की जो नंबर है, इफ इट इज़ गोइंग टू बी मोर देन वन, देन इट विल नॉट रिमेन अ सोल प्रोप्राइटरशिप. एंड एज वन सिंगल पर्सन कैन नॉट ब्रिंग अनलिमिटेड मनी, हैंस द साइज ऑफ द बिजनेस रिमेन स्मॉल. So as I told you, these were the various characteristics. Single ownership, formation and closure is very easy as there is no law where it has to be registered. The liability is unlimited of the sole proprietor. He has to bear all the risk as well as the profit. The whole control lies in the hand of that one man who is the owner. Business and the owner, they don't hold any separate legal entity. They are the same. The business lacks continuity as कुछ भी अगर businessman को हुआ, business will also come to an end and it remains small in size. So these were the features and the meaning of a sole proprietor business. With the help of these characteristics only, you can also study the merits and the demerits. Like as I told you, like if there is only, it has only one man control, so what happens is that the decision making becomes very quick. You don't need, the sole proprietor doesn't need to discuss with any other person. He can immediately take the decision whenever he wants. He can keep all the information of the business confidential because he is the whole sole controller and the manager of the business, so he doesn't need to share the business secrets with anyone. Also there is direct incentive. When I say direct incentive, I means जो भी business को फायदा होता है वो सीधा का सीधा पूरा फायदा sole proprietorship को मिल जाता है. I mean the sole proprietor, he himself get all the benefits of the business. So that's why there is always a direct incentive, सीधा फायदा, and hence he is always motivated to work hard. There is always also a sense of accomplishment. When I say sense of accomplishment means if the business becomes successful, then it is the sole proprietor who takes all the credit. So he feels accomplished, he feels pride on himself and his talent, and it is easy to form and dissolve as there is no legal formality. So these are the various advantages that can be easily drawn from the characteristics. Also the disadvantages, like as I told you, there is only one single person who brings all the money, so the resources, they always remain limited, and the life of the business is also limited because business and the sole proprietor, both of them, they don't enjoy any separate legal entity. They are the same. If the businessman dies, business comes to an end. The liability remains unlimited. one single person, the sole proprietor, only has to bear all the risk, all the losses of the business, and also managerial skill is limited. A person, he cannot be very good at every part of the business. So whatever talent the sole proprietor has, he has to run with that. So these were the meaning, the advantages and the disadvantages of sole proprietorship firm. In the next video, we will discuss about a joint Hindu family business. Take care, children. Happy learning.